What is up, YouTube? This is Nanashi with a brand new deck profile video. This time I'll be showing you my brand new light attribute deck, which is a pure main deck Mekk-Knight deck. First off, let me say that I actually enjoyed playing the Metaphys deck, but unfortunately because it had no future support as far as I could tell, there was really nowhere for it to go other than to stay where it was. I could tech around a little bit with it, but it wasn't going to be able to progress. But not only is this deck interesting in the way it base operates, but it has been confirmed to get new support in as early as the next set. So I'm interested enough to try it, and it turned out that I liked it. Let me show you what I got. Starting off with the monster lineup, we have a playset of Mekk-Knight Blue Sky, arguably the most powerful searcher in this deck. Now I'm going to start by saying this. Every Mekk-Knight main deck monster has a common trend in its effects. If there are two or more cards in the same column, you can special summon this card from your hand into that column, and you can only special summon each of them with these individualized effects once per turn, but you can special summon them in other ways. Now, Mekk-Knight Blue Sky's unique effect is that when he is special summoned or normal summoned from the hand into a column, you can search Mekk-Knight monsters from your deck to your hand, all of which have separate names and do not include him, equal to the number of cards in your opponent's half of the column, which means just by summoning this one monster, you can gain up to 3 new monsters straight from your main deck. Moving into the 6 stars, we have Mekk-Knight Green Horizon. His unique effect is that when he battles a monster in the same column, you can add a Mekk-Knight monster in your graveyard to your hand. But arguably that's not going to come up very much because the deck kind of likes to banish itself a little more often than leaving itself in the graveyard, so I'm running him at 1. Same with Mekk-Knight Orange Sunset, who says that if a card in the same column on the opponent's side of the field leaves the field, then you can special summon any Mekk-Knight monster from your hand. A little bit better, but still not really what the deck needs, so I'm keeping him at 1 as well. In the 7 stars, we have a pair of Mekk-Knight Red Moon. You can banish a Mekk-Knight monster out of the graveyard and target and destroy any monster that's in the same column. Now, Mekk-Knight Yellow Star has an almost identical effect, except instead of destroying a monster in the same column, you target and destroy a spell or trap card in the same column. Starting off with the 8 stars, we have Mekk-Knight Indigo Eclipse. Once per turn, you can target a Mekk-Knight monster on the field and move it into any of your open main monster zones. And then we have Mekk-Knight Purple Nightfall, the other searcher of the deck. Once per turn, during either turn, you can target one Mekk-Knight monster you control, banish it, and if you do, you can add any other Mekk-Knight monster from your deck to your hand except a copy of Purple. And any monsters banished for the cost of Purple return to the field during your next standby phase. Next we move into the spell cards. Starting off with a staple Dark Hole, because I don't have Red Deckies. 2 Instant Fusion, and my target for this card is kind of expected. You'll figure it out. Monster Reborn, and I am so glad we finally got this back, even if it is only going to be temporary because of the Lost Art promotion. 2 MST, 1 Reasoning, which is a questionable tech card in this deck, since at this moment in time, the level array is between 5 and 8, and more often than anything, your opponent's probably going to call 8. Triple Terraforming. I do enjoy this field spell. It's not 100% necessary, but the way the field spell works, getting numerous copies of it in your hand is not a bad thing, and having these cards in your hand to set is not a bad thing either. 2 World Legacy Key. When you activate it, you can target a banished Mekk-Knight or World Legacy card and put it back in your hand. Also, any trap cards that are in the same column as a Mekk-Knight monster you control with activating effects are negated. This is one of the 3 cards that enables the pseudo-lockdown strategy that this deck offers. But realistically, it's not going to make that much of a difference because your opponent can pick and choose where they place them. And World Legacy Scars, the field spell. Gives 300 attack and defense to your Mekk-Knight monsters, and once per turn you can discard a Mekk-Knight or World Legacy card and draw a new card. And that's a soft once per turn as well. And in addition, if you have 8 Mekk-Knight monsters with different names in your graveyard and or on your field, you can send this card to the graveyard and banish all 8 of them. Your opponent loses both their hand and their extra deck, which means they don't necessarily automatically lose, but it makes it a heck of a lot harder for them to play. And now we finish up the main deck with the trap cards. Starting with my new staple double bottomless trap hole, single solemn warning, and double Torrential Tribute. We also have a pair of World Legacy Whisper, the second card in that 3-card combo I was telling you about. When it's activated, you can target a level 5 or higher monster and give it 1,000 attack and defense until the end of the turn, which is not so bad. But as long as this card's face up, any spell cards that have activating effects that are in the same column as a Mekk-Knight monster you control are negated. This one's a little bit more detrimental than Key, because spell cards are used in almost every deck, whereas traps are really sporadic unless your opponent's playing counter traps. And finally, we have World Legacy Secret. When it's activated, you can target a level 5 or higher monster in your grave, special summon it, and when this card leaves the field, you destroy that monster. Not a big deal, it's just a Call of the Haunted. But while it's face up on the field, you negate any opponent's activated monster effects that are in the same column as a Mekk-Knight monster. This is one of the reasons this deck is just a little bit too strong for its own good. Granted, it only works on cards on the field, but locking out monster, spell, and trap effects is kind of a bad thing. But it only works in specific columns, which means that it doesn't completely blanket the field. It just makes you have to care about where you place your cards, which I am 100% okay with. Next we move into the side deck, starting with a single copy of green and a single copy of orange. The reason I have these and not other copies of, say, red and yellow is because I'm already running 2 red and yellow, and you never want to run more than 2 of those in the main deck, in my opinion. Green and orange are not the greatest cards in the archetype. In fact, they're probably the weakest. But having them at 1 each means that if they are banished and you don't have a way to get them back, you lose the ability to access that field spell move. So having additional copies that you can side in later means that you open up new possibilities for getting that move later. In fact, you might even be able to do it a second time. You also have the 3rd Instant Fusion, an additional MST, the 3rd World Legacy Key, Compulsory, Double Fiendish Chain, Triple Gozen Match. This card was heavily recommended for not only this deck, which is supposed to be all light attributes, but all my other attribute-based decks that I run, and I have in fact implemented this in every single one of them. Each player can only control 1 attributed monster at a time, and if you have more, you have to send them to the graveyard until you control only 1. Not only does this mean that my deck is protected from things like kaijus, but for people who run mixed attribute decks, this restricts their movements down to a minuscule number. So with this, I even stand a chance against certain powerful decks. 2 Mind Over Matter, a godsend trap card for this deck where it is actually all psychic type monsters in the main. I didn't even realize that until recently. You tribute a psychic monster, and you can negate a spell, trap, normal, or special summon. 1 Mirror Force, and the 3rd Whispers. And now we finish up with the admittedly tiny extra deck. First off is my instant fusion target, Panzer Dragon. If it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can target a card on the field and destroy it, which means that if I don't use it for something like a material for some kind of summon, I can get a free pop. But with it being a 5-star, that means I can use it for, say, Xyz material into something like Constellar Pleiades, who lets me detach a material and target any card on the field and return it to the owner's hand. Which means I could reuse some of my continuous spells and traps and move them to different zones, or I could bounce an opponent's monster that may not be destroyable by battle or card effect. And when that runs out of material, I could also upgrade it into Constellar Ptolemy 7, who can detach a material, except on the turn you summon it using its upgrade effect, to add any monster on the field or in the graveyard back to its owner's hand. Now, you could summon this legitimately by using orange and green, but the odds of doing that are kinda low since I keep those numbers low. And a single copy of Mekk-Knight Spectrum Supreme, which is realistically all I really need at this moment in time. Requiring 2+ Mekk-Knight monsters makes him a little hard to summon at first, but if he's the only card in the column, he can attack directly. If he's in the extra monster zone and points to no monsters, it cannot be targeted or destroyed by card effects. And you can send another card you control in this card's column to the graveyard and special summon any Mekk-Knight monster from your deck in defense mode, but you can only use this effect of Mekk-Knight Spectrum Supreme once per turn. And that is the deck. I've expressed my concern toward things like lockdown and shutdown decks for a long time, personally considering them to be a bit, what's the word I'm looking for, not fun to play with or play against, which is one of the reasons I don't run the Thunder shutdown deck anymore. but I don't really consider this deck a shutdown system per se. Sure, it can negate a ton of effects, but it's only if your opponent's cards are in the same column as my Mekk-Knight monsters. It's really more of a punishment system for poor placement. It's like Overwatch the deck. The only instance in which it becomes a problem is if you happen to have at least 2 of the 3 continuous cards that can negate effects, and at least 1 copy of Indigo. Because since he can move from column to column freely during either turn, or move another one into a different column, he is the one that enables the multi-negation system. So in that respect, it's overpowered, but since he himself is not the strongest monster in the deck attack-wise, overall, it's easy to get over him if you're able to just summon something that can get 2700 or more. So I consider this deck overall fair. It's not really overpowered in my opinion. But this deck is still technically in the beta stages at the moment because the new monster, Mekk-Knight Avram, which is a 4-star normal monster for whatever reason, is going to be coming out next set, which means I may be changing this entire build from top to bottom when it finally drops. Probably going to be removing the instant fusions and the reasoning. I thank you guys for watching the deck profile video. If you can think of any way that I can improve this all-light deck, feel free to let me know. But in the meantime, this has been Nanashi, signing out.
What's the next stage? What's the next stage?